Welcome to this episode of Sunny Silver Linings. Sunny's guest this week is Keith and Anne Schoolcraft of A Couple of Gurus. Keith founded A Couple of Gurus in Minneapolis in 2002 and was an early adopter of the managed services model. His wife Anne joined the company in 2012 and has held multiple leadership positions in the company as it has grown. Anne now also implements EOS for the Gurus and other MSPs across North America. We are so excited to have them as our guest today. And now, your host, the founder and CEO of IT by Design, Mr. Sunny Kaila. Over to you, Sunny.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you. And I am just so excited about my podcast today because I have special guests with me. They are so near and dear to me, and they are our family. Anne and Keith from A Couple of Gurus. And a lot of my MSP friends, they know them. They are very, very familiar faces in the channel and always there to add value to MSP community. And Anne and Keith, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to share, where we started, our journey together. And Anne, if you remember, I think it was about 4 years ago, when I got to know from Jas, our customer success manager, that A Couple of Gurus going to leave us because of some service challenges. And then I got on a call with you and I asked for 30 days. And I'm like, Anne, you will only pay. You pay, you don't pay. It's not that important. What's important to me is that give us that opportunity to kind of really add value to you. And thank you so much for saying yes at that time. You gave us that permission for another 30 days, 60 days. And then from that point on, I know that our relationship, the engagement that we had with one engineer, that grew to a very different level. Not only that, we both organizations, they worked well together. And then we took a trip together, Keith, to our India offices as well. So journey so far has been awesome. And thank you so much for your partnership.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're so glad. I'm so glad that you called me that day and we made it work because it's been great ever since.
Yeah, and talk about when we as a business owners, especially small business owners, we have to really, really understand and take that, at the leadership level, taking time to listen to our customer and also making those bold promises and then owning those promises. That's one thing that when I'm reflecting on A Couple of Gurus and IT by Design journey, that's what comes to my mind.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And another piece that I remember, Keith, from our kind of trip to India, I know that we were in a bus and we were moving towards Taj Mahal. And you were going through your pilot manual, you were studying for your test. And I'm like, there are a lot of acronyms here. So we started talking about, how pilots will remember a lot of these procedures using those acronyms. And I'm like, Keith, one thing that we always struggle with is that as we are growing, how can you have everyone remember core values and talk about those core values? And is there an easy way to do this? And we started working on finding an acronym for IT by Design's core values that are humility, accountability, passion, positivity, and community. And we came up with HAPPY. From H, humility, to accountability. And since then, every single team member at ITBD remember, they now have something, a reference point, and it's easy for them to remember our core values because all they have to remember is happy. And with that happy, then they can easily come up with those core values and remember those.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because I know, and I know she's an U.S. expert, and core values is really with the VTO, core focus, core products. And when you talk about core values and all, EOS business operating system that a lot of MSPs are using, and the importance of core values and kind of beating that drum almost every day with your team to make sure that it's not just something on the wall or paper. You really are intentional about living those core values. And that one acronym, that trip that we had together, when I recall that trip and the value that just our conversation added there is just so much valuable, and it's always going to stay with us. It's it's so amazing. So thank you so much.
Blessings.
Yeah, please go ahead, Keith.
Unexpected blessings in moments of time.
Yeah, no, thank you. And there's just so much cultural alignment as well from the leadership perspective and the organization perspective, because I remember still when you were coming back from India, you made a stop in Indonesia.
Yeah.
And that is, I remember how big of a go-giver you are. And you have done so much in the community in terms of community work, and with Anne's involvement with a lot of community initiatives there. And when we look at, that's what we are so focused on as well, building communities and really making a difference in the communities that we live in or people around us. So can you tell us a little bit about that as well? Like what you guys are doing there in terms of community work or go-givers work?
Yeah. To jump off from the Indonesia side trip that I did, I realized that when I took the trip to India, I was in at least the right hemisphere in the world to go down to Indonesia. And there's a little kid that we've supported for the last 10 years. So we've written letters over the years back and forth. So it was an opportunity to go visit him and just meet face to face. So that was pretty cool. And then the other things, Anne is involved with an organization here called the Hope Chest for Breast Cancer, and pours a lot of her time into that. Anne, you probably want to say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we help breast cancer patients here in the Twin Cities with their daily living expenses, the stuff that insurance doesn't cover. So making sure that they have food and shelter and the things that they need. My mother had breast cancer, and the founder of our charity is a dear lady that's a mentor to me. And so I just love being able to help our community that way.
And thank you for being a great human being, because that's what life is all about, that leading with purpose and adding value to people around us. So, and when we had conversations in the past, and I know your culture is very strong and you always do things for your team, for people around you. And I just wanted to talk about this a little bit, because it is so important for leaders, for business leaders, to not only focus on their business, just the Excel sheet or the balance sheet. It gives us a different meaning and different level of commitment when we are looking at business as more of a kind of community building or making a difference, adding value to people that we serve. Okay, now I'm going to get into a little bit of a remote workplace that we had to pivot starting March. So are you guys now back to office? Like everyone is back to office, or still some people are working remotely, or everyone is working remotely? Keith, can you talk to me a little bit about where you are in terms of your remote workforce?
Yeah, we're still working remotely. There's the office is technically open to go to And so sometimes, we obviously go in to check the mail and things like that. But pretty much we've let everybody go ahead and work remotely. We've kind of always had some remote employees. And one of the things that we did that was intentional was to always make that remote experience feel like you were in the office. And so, little things like making sure everybody was equipped with cameras and that you use the cameras and things like that just kind of brings that culture in. We have a morning, we call it our morning focus call. It's a call that we all get on. This was something that we were doing before, but it's a chance for anyone to speak, give updates, kind of report what their priority for the day is. So that's been one of those kind of little crucial pieces that has tied the team together. So even when we were in the office full time, the remote employees joined that call. So everyone joins that call. And it's just been I think an instrumental piece of the puzzle in feeling like, nothing has changed. And that, kind of, I think people need some semblance of normalcy, right? And so having that consistent, that schedule, that structure, with that morning focus call has really helped in that. And then we already had the policy of like when we're going to do an engineering meeting that we're going to use Teams to, bring in the other engineers who can't physically be here. So ironically, when everybody went virtual, our engineering meetings have been more well attended than they were when we were physical.
And do you know the reason for that? Like, what's the reason behind better attendance?
Well, I think, actually a portion of the reason is people aren't stuck driving. And so they're not stuck in traffic. And so previously we had several engineers that they would be at a client site and then they would be on their way back to the office. And so, they might join just via audio, but they were clearly stuck in traffic. So I think to some degree, just not having that commute time has given us back some productivity.
Sure. And like overall impact on business, do you see any impact on the business in terms of productivity to, things that customers are looking for? I mean, how do you view everyone, engineers, especially working remotely, and the impact on your business and clients?
Yeah, I think, I think it depends on the individual. I've talked to a lot of customers, and there's definitely a theme of more openness to remote workers and continuing that after we're through all of this. And I think our mindset is probably along the same lines. There's some of us that like to go to a separate space just to have some separation between home and work, and or some people's home environments are not, maybe they don't have a good setup where as they do at the office, kind of a thing. They're making it work now, but they would rather again have that separation. So I think the thing is true for us. It's definitely making us rethink how much office space do we really need? Do we need the size of office that we currently have, or can we kind of go into this hybrid mode where maybe we have a reduced footprint where we can still receive product in and things like that? But the engineers really do love working remotely. Of course, they're still going on site to deploy product if product needs to be installed. But once it's installed, they can continue to work remotely on that. So I think there's definitely changes that we're thinking about, that our clients are thinking about. just working remotely to some degree opens up opportunity, but it definitely has some challenges. You can't turn around in your seat and talk to your colleague next to you, necessarily. I think the Teams channels that we've set up has helped and kind of virtually keep that community atmosphere going, but it's not quite the same as being in the office. It's not the same when you're walking by a screen that has some KPIs on it. You don't necessarily have that set up at home, kind of a thing. So there are some detractors from that point of view that kind of clue you in on how things are going. But it also creates marketplace opportunity.
Yeah, sure. No, thank you. So, Anne, I know you are an EOS expert, and you have been implementing EOS for a lot of other businesses. Is there anything in the EOS process or tool in the toolbox, something that you recommend to businesses where they can use that tool to kind of leverage their remote workforce more effectively?
That's a good question. I always like to go back to the people analyzer. So this is just a really simple grid where you list out your core values across the top, like you were talking about earlier, whether you have an acronym or not. And then just a simple GWC, which stands for gets it, wants it, and capacity to do it. And this is a really important tool for hiring and then for ongoing evaluations. So we've had remote employees and folks at IT by Design for years. And it's so important when we interview them to really use the people analyzer to make sure that culture fit is there, because the remote relationship just works so much better if you know those core values are really grounded. So you're just taking a look at each of the core values and rating them on, do they exhibit this most of the time, some of the time, or rarely? And when you're interviewing, the key is to ask really behavioral questions to get them to tell you a story about how they lived out that value, not just saying, do you have integrity, but getting them to tell a story about when they had to make a hard moral decision and did the right thing. Getting that up front just produces a lot more success in those remote relationships.
No, thank you for sharing that. People component is so critical for every business, and if we get the people component right, then a lot of other byproduct issues gets resolved. How do you view the L10, the meeting rhythm system, and do you think that can help a business in the remote leadership or remote workplace when remote leadership is required?
Absolutely. Having both a regular meeting pulse, so a regularly scheduled meeting that starts at the same time and ends at the same time on a regular basis, and to have that really strong agenda so that you're getting the most out of your time. Everybody's got distractions. There's dogs, there's kids, meetings are a little different than they used to be, but having that agenda to make sure you get through what you need to get through in the meeting is so important. I feel that we've actually doubled down on our level 10 meetings since the pandemic, because you can't just run down to someone's office and chit chat. I mean, yes, you can get on Teams and that's fine, but to develop that discipline of saying, you know what, I'm going to bring that to my level 10 meeting for my department or for the leadership team. I'm going to put that item on the issues list and just wait until it's time for that meeting. And then you get a lot done in a short period of time. There's a lot less back and forth.
Yes, totally agree, because one thing that I have seen at IT by Design, as you know, we are an EOS shop as well, is that having that weekly touch point and morning huddle that we have, it just, when everyone is working from home, it just helps everyone come to that one call and say, okay, I'm stuck here, or what's going on in that person's world. And talking about distractions at home, our Lily, our dog Lily, and nowadays I get a lot of comments during even the interview call that, hey, Sunny, who is this Lily in your leadership team on your website? And I know she is a big distraction for me and Cam at home when we work. Okay, so now I want to get into a little bit more into EOS, and in terms of the culture fit piece. And I know you mentioned people analyzer.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's take that people analyzer and the importance of having that culture assessment. So now a lot of hiring is being done remotely, and we are doing a lot of Zoom interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire hiring process sometimes needs to be completed remotely. What we have experienced in the past is that the last or the final interview needs to be face-to-face. And I even take people to lunches, or coffee, kind of one-on-one for 2-3 hours especially for the critical roles. And during that lunch meeting, you get to know that person a little bit more, how they're talking to the person who's serving, how they are kind of, a lot of stuff that you cannot normally see in the body language when you're talking to someone over the Zoom. So I want to talk a little bit about how you have pivoted at a couple of gurus and how your clients and are pivoting to incorporate some of the best practices that we need to add in the complete remote hiring process.
I would say even before you get to interviews, you have to start with the accountability chart. So understanding the right structure for your organization and understanding what boxes on that chart are empty and need to be filled, and understanding the roles of those seats. Because you can't just start interviewing without knowing who this person is. You can't answer that get it, want it capacity to do it unless you know what the seat is. So I think a lot of times in the past, it was easy to say, oh, we lost somebody, we're just going to backfill that spot. Well, we need to step back and say, is that a seat that needs filling? Is there a different seat, or do we need to refill that seat? With some of the efficiencies that have come from remote work, it's a question to ask. Does every seat need to be backfilled? But some of us are growing as a result of the digital transformation a lot of our clients are going through. So we've got to start making those choices. Keith, would you say that actually the process of interviewing our IT by design engineers has been helpful in just learning how to do interviews over video?
Yeah, there's a good example of where it's not possible to have that in-person interview. What we've learned over the years is you have to, you stick to your process, right? Stick to your tried and true successful process. Really, is it obviously better to be in person? Of course, right? You can't replace that, but video is your next best thing, right? So, and I think, we used to hire for skill only, and in the early years, right? And that was before I realized how important hiring for that culture fit was. And because people can gain skills, right? And that want to have the capacity to do it. When you're looking to promote someone, well, maybe they don't have the capacity yet, but in that conversation with them, you can guide them, right? You can say, all right, I need you to get these skills so you have the capacity before I put you into this position, rather than putting someone into a position and, not be successful. So I think, kind of going back to the basics, going back to, not compromising, having them, like you said, and, tell those stories. And, in our case, we have more than one person do the interview, right? So I think it's good to have that multi, kind of 360 kind of viewpoint, perspective. And, I one thing that I, especially with the remote workers is, I kind of ask, is this a person that I could see, hanging out at our office or going out with us to an office event or an after hours event or whatever, right? Is this someone I would want to go to, with, to that kind of thing? And so, if the answer's no to that, it's not going to be a good hire, right? Because you're not going to treat them, like they're one of your own. One of the things probably, I sometimes forget that our IIT by Design guys actually work for someone else. So when when you guys have a meeting, I'm like, wait a minute, what? Wait, oh yeah, I guess it does.
Yeah, they're very much part of our team.
They're very much part of our team. They're part of our company meetings as well. So we treat them like we treat all of our employees, and I think that's what makes it successful. And we have stateside employees that are remote as well. And again, we treat them the same way. They might not be able to join us for maybe a Christmas party, but we can send them a meal right through DoorDash or one of the other services, right? So we can still make them feel a part of the team. And I think that's a big piece of it, is continuing that culture piece is just critical.
Keith said something interesting when he was talking about the hiring process in terms of, if it's not someone that you'd want to spend time with, it's not going to be a good hire. I think that's one of the most difficult situations we find in EOS implementations, is when you've got someone who's in the right seat, they're skilled at their job, but they're not the right person for your company. Mm-hmm. Those can be some of the most painful, because the logical side of your brain is saying, but they do a good job, don't they? But it can be so toxic for the culture. And so it's so much better to make those decisions early before that person's on your team and not nearly as painful.
I totally agree with that. The first criteria is the person needs to be pleasant to work with. And if that person is pleasant to work with, then, the relationship is healthy, and you can work on you can do a lot more together. And that's a great point, Keith. And when it comes to right person, right seat, and I know how painful it can be, like I have gone through personally so many different experiences, more in the beginning when it was really, you knew, but at the same time, you had a really hard time making those decisions when someone is breeding negativity in the team, but that person is a high performer. It could be a salesperson, it could be an engineer. They do wonders in terms of their skills. They are very, very technical, or they are kind of exceeding their sales quota, but they are not good cultural fit, and they kind of do more of a damage. And I had to learn in a hard way in the beginning that no matter how high performers they are, you have to be able to make those decisions. And to your point, early on, just in the beginning, before they do more damage, and then you have to work a lot more harder to kind of really address other situations that transpires out of that person's negativity. Mm-hmm. And accountability chart is another piece that you mentioned. And a lot of leaders, they just kind of will say, okay, Mr. Recruiter, or the staffing company, they go to the staffing company, I need this person. But they really don't take that time to sit down, define their accountability chart, where they're going to fit in, understanding why of their position, what value that they're expecting, what success measures will make that person successful, or how they're going to measure and manage their performance, or what KPIs they will use. Mm-hmm. So leaders that take more time in the beginning to understand the role, define success measures, and then they go into the recruitment process. They are a lot more successful with their kind of success ratio of high performers or high potential employees. So that's a very, very important point.
You know where MSPs make that mistake most of the time? When they're first hiring their first salesperson. They don't think through the structure that they want. They instead go and hire a salesperson and create a structure around them, and it doesn't work. Rather than deciding ahead of time what's the structure that we need, and then seeking a candidate that fits into that framework.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we all know that a lot of MSP businesses, the toughest part of the business that they will share with us is building their sales and marketing organization. That lot of small businesses and our MSP friends, they struggle to build their self-managing sales and marketing department. And I was one of them. And one reason that I kind of, when I reflect on my entire business journey, and I have, computer engineering background, then I started as a IT person, IT manager, director, and it was very tech centric. And when I used to go to, it could be IT Nation, it could be Datto's conference, you go there and you bring in a lot of tools, you bring in a lot of processes, and you come back and you have a hard time having that buy-in from your team, but you are more just thinking tech first. And as soon as we shifted our mindset from tech-centric to people-centric, and more of the business, the strategy, working on the business rather than in the business, everything changed. And I used to think, or I used to think why. So in the beginning of IT by Design, that I pay the salesperson for 3 to 6 months, and then they don't work out, and then I was thinking maybe there's something wrong with either our hiring process, or it's just I'm not getting lucky enough to find the right salesperson. And it was a revolving door. Every 6 months, you spend the salary on a person, give them 6 months ramp up. But what I was not really aware or experienced enough was I need to build that system, the structure, accountability, to kind of bring in someone and giving them the sales playbook, that this is the sales playbook, and this is the process we will use to set you up for success. So it was more of my failure rather than the salesperson's failure, but it took me a little while and so much money, and it's a very costly mistake that I have made. And now, talking to other MSP friends, I'm like, if there's one thing that you can do is first take some time, have an advisor. If you don't have that type of background, take that advisor, think through what you really need, build that structure to bring in that person and create that environment which is conducive to success. And so thank you, Keith, for sharing that. And I'm going to now move into more of opportunities and challenges that we see as MSPs in the new norm, the new world. So starting with you, Anne, what are the opportunities and challenges that you see in the new world?
I am seeing an interesting tension around planning. So I really expected the number of people asking me about EOS to sort of level off when the pandemic hit. Oh, what if there's a recession? But the opposite has been true. People are realizing that they need to have a plan. So putting together that vision traction organizer, making sure you've got a clear vision and clear plan for 3 years, 1 year, next quarter, is becoming more crucial. And it's been funny because the clients I've been working with for a couple of years have come to me at their quarterlies and like, does it even make sense to come up with a plan for next quarter? We don't even know what's going to happen next week. Yes, it absolutely does. And the following quarters, they've come back to me and said, oh, I'm so glad we had a plan, because we were able to focus on the things that were most important and everything else could just sort of filter around that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Keith, what are the opportunities and challenges that you see?
To me, the opportunity was to really pour into the marketing side of things. In 2008, I was not in a position to be able to do that. And when I looked at those that did, they were eventually able to gain more market share because they poured more into marketing during that time, even though the results weren't immediate and they were perhaps a little bit delayed. It was crucial to their future success. So I took that lesson, and we back in March said, let's double down on marketing. And to Anne's point, we had already put a plan together. And so had we not had a plan, we wouldn't have been able to execute on it. We would have been stuck trying to get the plan together, but we had already been working pieces of the plan. We just said, let's accelerate the plan that we already have. And so one of the things that we did was, a lot of organizations will have like a sales goal or whatever. The last few quarters, I said, well, we need a lead goal. We need to get good at generating and recognizing the leads that we are getting and have, and recognize that they're all at different stages in their buying process. So they're not necessarily all ready to sign up for services right away. But at the end of the day, I think the challenges are they're somewhat the same, but they're somewhat different, right? Challenges of how do we collaborate? How do we, so I think the marketplace opportunities are somewhat the same. It's just how do we do that remotely and effectively? And so I think from an IT perspective, it puts MSPs in a good position to be able to help solve those types of challenges. But you can't get that message out if they don't know who you are and where you are and how you can help. And so I think, I see so many people afraid to do a marketing, strategy. I mean, we had some conversations, you and I, Sunny, I'd picked your brain a little bit back in March. I don't know if you remember, but just on what were some of the basic steps we could take, and one of the basic steps was just reaching out to our customers and doing check-ins with them, and that was, I had recognized that you guys were doing that with us, and, it made me feel appreciated. So, I was like, well, we appreciate our clients. Why wouldn't we, do the same thing? And so, and granted, my account manager had already been doing check-ins, but we just kind of stepped it up, right? We stepped it up, made sure, people were okay. And if there was anything we could do to help support them, right? And I think that did a lot for us in that, it helped kind of be able to see where opportunities were going to be with what challenges that they were having, what things that we needed to set up for them. And, the same thing's true for new prospects and customers too, is they're going through some of the same things. But so I'm thankful that, we were in a position this time around to go ahead and pour into that and kind of get the message out there of we're here to support you.
And Keith, are you focusing on any specific piece of marketing, like digital or other pieces that are out there? I know there's so much happening in the digital world. And are you focused on any specific piece of marketing, or you're taking that whole 360 approach?
Yeah, we are taking we are taking our core focus and target market of supporting world-changing organizations, and so we really want to attract the customers that are going to be a good fit for us. And so it kind of goes back to that core. Today, I believe the best strategy is digital, because most of the traditional methods have are not there anymore. So we've been pouring into different digital avenues, be it whether that's participating in an online discussion or being intentional about some AdWords or some LinkedIn marketing. But really, a big focus is spent on creating content that's relevant to our target audience, so that we can, whether they do business with us or not, we're giving them something of value.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, one of the most challenging piece that we have experienced here at IT by Design during pandemic is employee engagement. So I want to talk a little bit about employee engagement in the distributed workforce environment, like everyone working from home. So what are you guys doing to make sure that everyone at a couple of gurus is engaged and connected?
So as you alluded to earlier, Sunny, everybody, just thinking through all the employees, everybody's engaged in a level 10 meeting of some kind. For their department or for the leadership team or both, in addition to our daily focus call. And having that regular rhythm definitely helps us stay on the same page and knowing what each other's priorities and issues are so we can help each other out as best possible.
I think keeping those rhythms in place is even more important, not, the one-on-ones, right? Everything from the one-on-ones to the engineering meeting to the morning focus, like all of those things, for organizations that stopped doing their rhythm, those are the ones that I think I've noticed that experience the most disruption. For those that have figured out how to keep their rhythm going, those are the ones that have seen the difference. And you have to also we do customer sat surveys, right? But we also do employee sat surveys so that we have a pulse on what's going on with them. So there's an anonymous way for them to give feedback. We also have some just engineer to engineer recognition that they can recognize each other as well. But again, I think it's really, ironically, even though for those of us that are visionaries sometimes don't always like the structure, it's really the structure that makes things successful.
Yeah, absolutely. We sometimes miss that structure piece. Yeah. And are you doing any kind of like virtual events where it's more like fun activities, things that you're doing to kind of, for example, virtual happy hours type of stuff?
So we're in the process of planning that, and it's been interesting because we traditionally have done a winter party in about February because the holidays are hectic, and in Minnesota, February is about the dreariest month that there is. So that's when we have a party. Usually it's a dinner, but this year obviously it's not going to be, and so. I put it in front of the admin team. Let's make sure that we do something we can include everybody in, because a dinner for the local folks is nice, but this is an opportunity to do something online together. So we're looking at a whole bunch of different options. There's something called game show battle rooms where you can play at interactive TV game shows with your coworkers. So there's magicians, there's comedians that are offering online party formats where they figured out how to make it interactive. You're not just watching a show, but you're actually interacting. So we're really looking forward to that. We, through our peer group too, we were challenged to an online Family Feud battle by another MSP in our geography that we compete with. We're friendly competitors,
right?
But we're really looking forward to that. And of course, we're going to win. So, that's something to look forward to.
So Keith, what are you doing at a couple of gurus that you recommend our other MSP friends should consider?
For me, remembering that whether it's an employee or a customer or a prospect, we're all people, right? And it's recognizing too that in this time, everyone is under a certain level of stress, and I think sometimes, reaching out one-on-one and just checking in and saying, how are you doing? And I think for me, it's that just keeping it personal and keeping it real, and not, especially today, sometimes when someone shows up late, you have to recognize that there might be other things going on, and just giving them a space, a safe space to be able to, get that off their chest. So I think for me, it's just remembering the people side of it. Sometimes you can be focused on the business side and the productivity side, and those are all great. But if you forget about the people side, I think you're missing the whole point.
Yeah, that's a great point, because we as leaders, we have busy schedules, and there's just so much to accomplish, so much to do, and sometimes we do forget that human element. And I think that's what makes you, Keith, very, very special. And when it comes to especially IT by Design and a couple of Gurus partnership, and that's what our people will share with us, your team with us, that a couple of Gurus team, they treat us like family, and they value us, and that comes from you taking the time and you being intentional about having that check-in with people. At the end of the day, we're dealing with people. So thank you for sharing that. And Anne, can you share with us what is that one thing from your perspective that we all should be doing as business owners?
I would go back to the idea of having, I hesitate to use the word structure because it sounds so rigid, but really a rhythm, having some rhythm that people can depend on even when the world is getting chaotic. So whether that's a meeting, whether that's a tradition, whether that's one of our IT by Design engineers shares a joke every single Friday, and everybody looks forward to it. So just having those things you can rely on when the rest of the world is undependable is really huge.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you so much for joining me today. Very, very valuable insights. And yeah, thank you for being wonderful, wonderful human beings. And we love you guys, and we love this partnership. And we are just so blessed and lucky that we have this partnership. And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. We really enjoyed it.
Wow, what a great episode. And if somebody has a question on EOS or how you're implementing it there, or culture, or Keith, what's the best way to get a hold of y'all if there's another MSP out there maybe wants to engage you?
So you're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn, just Anne Schoolcraft. I also have a website, EOS, and then the number 4, MSP, Managed Service Provider, EOS4MSP.com.
All right, I'll be sure we link those
and
right down
Todd,
below.
if people still can't find, then itbd.net or our university, we would love to put people in touch with that.
Absolutely. If you're a friend of Sunny, you're a friend of Anne. So we will absolutely connect the dots.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep. Keith and Anne, thank you so much for your time today. Sunny, wonderful episode. And to you, the listener and the watcher, thank you so much for taking the time to view this episode. Sure hope you took away a couple of golden nuggets. There certainly was a lot of them. And if you did, please honor us with a like, a share, a subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode.